how's it going, everybody? It is Josh Thomas here from TheBitBlock, and I'm going to be sitting down here and very casually going over a few complaints that I have heard about the Nintendo Switch that I personally don't really agree with. So this is kind of me responding to the criticisms that the Nintendo Switch presentation, or just the Nintendo Switch in general, has received. I want to point out right off the bat, if you are new here, I think there are plenty of people that can inform you I am not a fanboy of Nintendo's. I've had many complaints about Nintendo's in the past. I am personally very excited about the Switch. I think it's going to be amazing, and I think in a couple years from now, it's going to be doing really well. I think it's going to be doing really well, like even at the launch. Yeah, I just think that there are some complaints that people like to throw at Nintendo that I don't agree with, and I don't think they're fair, so I'm not going to take it anymore, and I'm going to defend Nintendo. Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, the one thing that I actually am very surprised to see people sort of complaining about is the price. So in case you don't know, for some weird reason, the Nintendo Switch is going to retail on March 3rd, that's when it launches, for $299.99. So essentially $300 here in North America. There are somehow people who think that is overpriced. I don't really get it because, you know, what bothers me is, and a lot of them are saying, like, I wish it was $250. That's what they wanted it to be. That's what they assumed it would be. It's not that, so they're upset. I think $300 is about as expensive as they could have made it. You kind of want to stay mainstream in a way, and I think $300 still is that. You know, what bothers me is there's a lot of people that are like, I want Nintendo to be competitive with Xbox and PlayStation. And it's like, you want them to be competitive with them, but then anytime Nintendo prices their machine in a way to where they can maybe be competitive with them as far as like horsepower and as far as the capabilities of the system, you complain. And what other, you know, what I don't understand is it's like if a Nintendo machine is $300, that's overpriced, yet if an Xbox and a PlayStation is $300 or $350, that's not overpriced? Because that's pretty much what those consoles launched for, and I don't think anybody was complaining that it's overpriced. And I know people are going to be like, well, it's not overpriced because traditionally the Xbox and the PlayStation, those are systems that have a lot of power behind them, a lot of horsepower. Everybody turns into Tim Allen all of a sudden when it comes to talking about video game machines. And we'll talk about this technical spec thing a little bit later because I got some stuff to say about that. Nintendo gives you value in different ways. Microsoft and Sony, they like to give you value as far as like, ooh, it's got the cutting edge processor thing chip. Whereas Nintendo's like, hey, you know, it's a pretty darn good capable system, but it's also got a lot of fun things with it. Nintendo's like the only video game console anymore, they're the only video game maker anymore that actually wants to kind of like find new ways to have fun with a game, with a controller. And I think that is just so crucial and so important when it comes to video games. Like, why do you want everything to just be so stagnant? Why do you want everything to just be a normal controller? And I don't even like calling it a normal controller. It's more of like a classic controller. Yeah, this works really well in some cases. And so does this. This is really fun. And so is this. Like, video games, you have to stop thinking video games are all this. Because that's stupid, that's closed-minded, and this always isn't the most fun way of doing something. So what I'm getting at is Nintendo gives you value for the $300 price tag by giving you a really cool HD rumble feature in both of the controllers. I think it's in both of them, right? Yeah, it's in the controllers, which I haven't used yet myself, but I'm intrigued. And I know you could say like, oh, people won't use it. Well, we don't know yet. We'll see where that goes. But it's definitely Nintendo taking something old and updating it and making it modern and interesting and trying new things. You know, being able to actually feel glass pouring into or water pouring into a glass in your hand, that could be pretty damn cool. And that kind of detailed rumble could be something that does enhance your game experience. I mean, just basic rumble does make you feel better when you're playing a game. Like when you get hit and you feel that, that's pretty cool. So having a better version of that, I'm okay with paying a little bit more for that. And then you also have like the ability, like the Switch is a 2-in-1 thing. The Switch is, you are getting a handheld Nintendo system, and you're getting a home console Nintendo system. If you were to buy a 3DS and a Wii U, I don't even know how much that would be because I don't keep up to date with prices because I've already bought them, but I'm pretty sure that would be like $500. Maybe not, maybe like $450 or so. More than the $300 price tag, and this is way more detailed than what the 3DS was capable of pulling off. I mean, you're playing Mario Kart 8 on the go. That's far beyond any type of an experience you could have on the 3DS as far as like graphical fidelity and stuff and the performance. And the screen is way better than the 3DS screen. So, I mean, I'm maybe not saying this very well, but I guess to sum it up, the $300 price tag isn't maybe giving you the most powerful graphic card on the planet, but it's giving you really high-tech controllers. It's giving you a 2-in-1 device that you can take with you or play at home. And I think that is where the value is. I hate how people think the price tag should be related directly to the power of the system. And we don't even know the power of the system yet. So that's something that I think is weird. But a lot of people were complaining about the price. And for some reason, they all just think like, I think it's too much for Nintendo. I don't think Nintendo should be $300. Why? Why is Nintendo the system that has to be like dirt cheap, yet you still want it to compete with the high-tech system somehow? Like you want all these third-party support and all that, yet you don't want it to be expensive in order to be able to get those. It doesn't make any sense. And I think the price of $300 is good, and I think complaining about it is just stupid because you're ignoring the fact that there's a lot of value in different ways in your Switch. Okay, so this is one that I'm really excited to talk about because I am actually incredibly pro motion control. Now, before I go on, I just want to say motion control does not work for everything. And of course, we still need some more classic style control for certain games. But motion control can be used as a main way to play a game, like Wii Sports Resort or maybe 1-2-Switch and stuff like that, to where it's like the whole game is really built around the motion control. Zack and Wiki, Red Steel 2, to name a couple of them, Boom Blocks. There have been many games in the past that are fantastic games, and it is because of the motion control. And then you got games like Splatoon and Splatoon 2 coming out. I can't play Splatoon without the motion controls. It's too slow and clunky. Having that extra layer of depth in your motion to look around and stuff gives you an advantage. Absolutely. And for first-person shooters, I can't go back to playing a first-person shooter like this. It seems clunky and slow. Being able to literally pinpoint where I want to shoot and all that, this is the way to play a first-person shooter as far as I'm concerned. So the fact that you can do that with the two Joy-Cons is fantastic. And by the way, I forgot to mention in the price, you're also getting like a really high-tech camera in one of the Joy-Cons, which is, again, making the price more worthy. But it also is related to the motion control. New ways to play video games and exploring those pastures and constantly pushing forward with that is very important. So whenever I hear people say
how the Joy-Con controller can use HD haptic feedback to provide the feel of a drink and ice cubes being inside of it. Why? I don't know. Motion controls. I don't know why they still think we want motion controls.
The downplay of the initial Switch sales pitch in favour of making another gimmick-laden waggle festival.
Nintendo, no one cares about any of this motion shit. They stopped giving a shit about this kind of games with the Wii!
It kind of annoys me. Because it's really self-indulgent. You're living in a bubble. You're assuming that because you don't like motion controls, nobody else does. And you're thinking, motion controls were introduced in 2006. It's 2017. Let's get rid of them. They're old now. Well, first of all, just like anything, motion controls have made advancements, and I'm willing to bet that the Joy-Cons have even more precise motion control. And yeah, I mean, look at the old control. Look at the NES controller. Look at the Super Nintendo controller, the N64, the GameCube. All of Nintendo's controllers have always pushed forward with new ideas. You know, back in the day, the NES controller was really weird. Like, before the NES controller, you would play... I'll use this Link as an example, this Link amiibo. But it was just like a little knob, and you'd do this, and there was like one button on an Atari or whatever. That's what the standard controller was. And then Nintendo came along, and they had the NES thing, and they had buttons and a D-pad and stuff. And you had two-player support, and you had, like, Nintendo has always been about pushing the boundaries with what can be done with a controller. I have no idea how there's so many people that are like, I grew up with Nintendo, I love Nintendo, man, but they gotta stop with these wacky new controllers. What? If you really grew up with Nintendo, you gotta stop and realize that those things you were using to play on the Super Nintendo and the N64, those were very weird and revolutionary for their time, and they became standard. And I got bad news for you, great news for me, and millions of others. Motion controls are a new form of standard. They're not the standard, but they are a standard, and they're not going anywhere. And thank God for that, because I want Wii Sports Resort 2, I want a new Boom Blocks type game, I want a Zack and Wiki type game, I want all those fun games, and I want games that I just control normal. It's not one or the other. You know, we can live in this beautiful, varied world of gaming where there's all sorts of types of games, and you get to play them in all different ways. To say that you're surprised that Nintendo put motion controls in these things is really weird to me because, there's no sign that people don't want motion control games anymore. Like, what motion control game came out that failed? Like, recently, like with Wii U. There weren't really a lot of motion control games on the Wii U. So yeah, I'm very pro motion control, and it's always annoying to me when people are like, I can't believe... I mean, when you first saw the Switch, because people were like, man, I didn't think they were going to do motion controls. When I first saw that reveal, I was like, okay, good. Nintendo's not doing motion controls anymore. And now I'm surprised that they are. When you saw them pull those two pieces of the controller off of the thing, you didn't think, oh, there's the new Wii Remote and Nunchuck? Like, did you really think these things weren't going to be motion controls? Like, how did you not see it coming? So next up, I talked about this a little bit when I mentioned the technical specs. One of the things I keep hearing people say, and it boggles my mind, which is easy to do because there's not a lot of stuff up here. There's just a lot of hair, a lot of blonde hair that I try to maintain in a hat right now. But people are really surprised that on stage Nintendo wasn't like, and here's a detailed analysis of all the technical specs behind the Switch. When has Nintendo ever done that? Nintendo's never been about the technical specs. They've never been like, hey, let's detail the tech specs to these people. Oh, it's got this type of a processor and this kind of a chip. You know when we're going to learn about the specs of the Switch? When somebody buys one and opens it up and then says what it is on the internet. Nintendo never comes out and says, this is what our system is. That's not a Nintendo thing to do because they think in a more artistic way. They think it's more important to make a system that's capable of doing the kind of games they want to create. They're not really going to brag about their hardware and their techs and all that. They'll brag about the controllers and stuff. But it's so crazy to me. Like, almost everybody's like, I can't believe we don't even know the specs for this thing. Somebody even said they're not going to buy it until they know the specs. What? Why is it that important? I understand that it is important to have the Switch be capable and have it to a certain extent powerful, right? Because that means games will run more smoothly. It means that more third-party games could potentially come over to the system. It's important to have a powerful system in this day and age, and it always has been. But everything we've seen, I mean, even the Wii U I felt was pretty powerful, aside from maybe a few things, but Switch seems pretty powerful. It seems powerful enough, and I don't know why so many people are so surprised and obsessed over the literal specs of what the Switch is. It's not that important. It really isn't. At least not at this point in time. Take it easy. We'll get the specs at some point, if that's so important to you, but to blame Nintendo for not saying it is weird, because again, they've never done that. And then finally, this one I might take a little bit of crap for, but I gotta say it. A lot of people always talk about third-party support when it comes to Nintendo. That's the most talked about thing, especially with the Switch. They're always talking about oh man, I've heard people say,
we're also dropping third-party support. Apart from a few games like FIFA and Rayman, you're still not gonna be able to get anymore.
Which is a little weird to me, because here's the deal. Aside from the NES and the Super Nintendo, third parties have abandoned Nintendo. They've not been with Nintendo for a long, long time. And it's true that we do get third-party games every generation, but as soon as competition came along, third parties moved over to Sega, they moved over to Sony. It's just not Nintendo's strength to have a lot of third-party games. So I don't understand why people don't just grasp this already. Get it through your head. Nintendo's console is never going to be the go-to console for third-party support. For a variety of reasons. For one thing, it's not going to sell as well. Doom and all those kinds of games like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, all those more core, gritty, realistic games, they're not going to sell as well on a Nintendo system. And I know you could say, well, the reason for that is because every time they make them, the Nintendo version is gimped in some way or it's late. And that's a legitimate complaint. That's a legitimate argument. But I think even if they weren't, even if it was the exact same thing, Nintendo's version would still be the weakest sales, and third parties would eventually say, why are we supporting the Switch? It's always the version that has the least amount of sales. Let's just focus on PC, Xbox, and the PlayStation. So, I mean, I don't really think third-party support is as important to the Switch's success as people think. What's important to the success of the Switch is Nintendo. The Marios, the Metroids, the Zeldas, the Star Foxes, the F-Zeros, the Pikmins, the Animal Crossing, the Fire Emblems, the Xenoblades, all of that stuff. And I'm sure I forgot the Kirbys, the Donkey Kongs. That is what is important to Nintendo's success, as well as brand new IPs. We've got Splatoon, we've got that little Snipper Clips thing, we've got ARMS, we've got, the more casual games like the Wii Sports stuff. That stuff is what Nintendo needs to focus on, as well as new stuff. Totally new stuff that we haven't even seen yet. If Nintendo does that, they don't need third-party support. A little bit of it here and there, sure, of course. But it doesn't need massive third-party support. Every big hardcore game that comes out for the Xbox and the PlayStation really doesn't need to go to the Nintendo system, because it's pretty much established. You buy a Nintendo system because you want Nintendo's games, and very rarely are those people going to also buy the third-party games. I will say this. This is one of the things that annoys me. Why is it that Nintendo always gets so much crap for not having the hardcore third-party games, right? That's something we all have heard time and time again. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Nintendo needs it. I don't think they do. But Nintendo always gets so much crap for that, and it's always such a topic of conversation. But nobody ever talks about how the Xbox does not have a lot of family-friendly games. Nobody ever says, where's the Xbox's version of Mario? Where's the Xbox's party games? I mean, there's a few because of Kinect, but there's not a lot of them. Where's the Xbox's version of Mario Kart or like a Metroid type game? Where's any of the first party stuff on the Xbox or the PlayStation? Because it's not really that much. Sure, they do have some first party stuff, but not even close to what Nintendo offers. So why is it that Nintendo takes so much crap for not having enough third-party support, but the Xbox and the PlayStation never take any crap for not having enough first-party support or having enough variety? I mean, the Xbox is really mostly catered to a hardcore demographic, and they have very little in the way of a more casual, lighthearted experience. Why is that okay? Why is that okay, but Nintendo not having a lot of bloody, gritty, hardcore, M-rated games, that's not okay. Nintendo needs to get that. Wanting Nintendo to have these big hardcore games, to me, is like saying, why doesn't Disney have a lot of movies where, you know, it's a horror film with a lot of blood and guts? Because that's not what Disney specializes in. For the same way, that's not what Nintendo specializes in. Nintendo needs to focus on their strengths, not their weaknesses. And I honestly think at the end of the day, with the Switch especially, third-party support is probably even more meaningless and needed than ever before. I'm sure a lot of you might disagree with me on that, but I'm going to ask you this. How many third-party games do you actually buy on the Nintendo consoles? Probably not a lot. And you could say, well, it's because there's not a lot of them on there, but I don't think you don't buy them. We don't buy them. Let's be honest. Nintendo fans, let's come clean. We're buying the Switch because we want Animal Crossing, we want Metroid, we want The Legend of Zelda, we want all the Nintendo stuff. That's why we're buying it. That's where all of our majority of our money is going to go. And very rarely do we sneak out beyond the Nintendo pastures to see what's going on elsewhere. That's just my opinion. Feel free to correct me and say that you really do want all these big hardcore games on a Nintendo system, but I don't see that happening. It's never been the case. Like, maybe on the NES they had that type of stuff, but that was only because there wasn't a lot of competition. You know, I mean, in the NES days, Nintendo was kind of the only sheriff in town. And the second more sheriffs came to town, the flock moved over with them. And I think now that we've got a 2-in-1 console where Nintendo is going to be putting all of their development teams making games for one machine, I think more than ever before, like I said, third parties are not going to be as needed. So, yeah. I don't think all this stuff about third parties needing to be on the system is really all that true. It'll be good if it happens, and Nintendo should try to get it to happen, but it's not going to be doom or gloom for Nintendo. So there you have it. That is my little defending the Nintendo Switch video. Feel free to agree with me or disagree with me in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I just want to point out that I'm not saying that I am necessarily right with what I said here. These are just my feelings, my own personal opinions. So, don't take them for gospel or anything. It's not God's word here, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe you agree with me. Price, $300, sounds great. I think there's enough value there. Would have been nice to have a pack-in game, but it is what it is, and I think, you get enough for your money. $300 for all this like cool stuff and this high-tech controllers and things and a thing that you could take with you, a handheld and a home console in one. Motion controls, they're not going anywhere. Get used to it. They're still fun. There's still a lot of ideas to be used with motion controls. They're a very untapped controller, a very untapped way of playing video games, I feel. And motion controls aren't making it to where there's not going to be any traditional controlling games. It's just another way to control video games. The technical specs, who cares? Honestly, yeah, it's important for it to be powerful, but the actual details, Nintendo has never really been a company to go into, so I don't know why people are surprised about that. And third-party support. if they make original games, if third parties make original games for Nintendo that feel very Nintendo in their design, I think those will sell really well. But bringing over Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed and Destiny and all the Doom and all this stuff, why bother? It's going to be the weakest sales on the Switch, and there's no changing that. And why not encourage third parties to do something that's a little bit more original for the Switch rather than just porting over a version of what they're already doing? I think most people who really love those games, those hardcore games, I think they think Nintendo's for kids and they don't care. So, yeah. I'm excited about the Switch. It's not a flawless console, and that presentation was absolutely not flawless. But I got some good vibes, and I just wanted to get that out there, respond to some of the haters or the critics, and yeah. Hey guys, keep it locked right here to the BitBlock for a lot more on Nintendo Switch.